Next, we have item 9.1.2, the 2024-25 Transportation Plan. Again, Barb?
Yes, I assume that Phil's going to do the presentation.
Exactly, yes.
So we'll welcome Phil Skrupa. I'm so sorry.
So you see on your screens the 2024-2025 Pupil Transportation Plan. And just some overview of what our mission is here at LPS Transportation. It is to provide safe and timely student transportation to and from assigned schools and activities according to district policies. And once again, we like to consider the school bus an extension of the classroom. In fact, we utilize a motto that is the first and last classroom of the day. So some quick statistics that we'll run through regarding transportation from the previous year. We transported a total of 3,939 students in the 2023-24 school year, which was a significant increase over the previous year. Of those, 28%, or 1,094, were regular education students, including TCA, Arts and Humanities, Science Focus, the Bay. 36%, or 1,425, were special education students. That also includes certain programs like the Don Sherrill, Nurnberger, Yankee Hill, the ISP, the Independence Academy, programs like that that are all encompassed within special education. 24.5%, or 966, were early childhood students. 11.5%, or 454, were English language learners, which is also an increase over the previous year. We ran 1,682,306 route miles during the school year, as well as 166,095 miles for activities and athletics. At the end of the school year, we were left with 134 total drivers, 116 of which were route drivers, 6 were conflicting trip drivers, 6 subs, and 6 shared route drivers, meaning 2 drivers to cover 1 route. They share a route. We had 73 paraprofessionals, 64 of which were regular route pairs, 7 subs, 2 shared route pairs. So a total of 126 routes and 787 runs for the previous school year. So the trends in our ridership, we noticed in the focus program, ridership averaged about 111 in the AM as well as the PM. Of those, breaking it further down, Arts and Humanities were 85, Science Focus program 26. TCA ridership averaged about 103 in the morning. It tailed off as the day went on, 56 in the midday and 54 in the PM. We did see ridership increases in early childhood and special education as well as ELL during the last school year. So as we came into the previous school year, we were still facing a large driver shortage, which is something that has gone on for a few years now. And it's not just us, it is other people in the industry that are struggling to get CDL drivers. We also experienced that same shortage from our vendor that we've utilized to help support our route needs the last several years, known as First Student. The transportation team did work diligently last year to consolidate some routes as much as they could from 131 down to 126 to try to match our staffing availability. Currently projecting for the coming school year, we're looking at about 127 routes. The plan would be, as staffing would allow, to build back up to a level more like 150 routes, but that's something that will only be able to be accomplished as staffing allows. Some of the implications of our consolidated route plan, it inevitably means that route times or ride times increase. There are only so many variables, and one of those is time. And so when we're trying to do more with less folks, that means longer rides. So policy typically has been to try to keep bus rides right at an hour or less. With the current situation, there are times when some of those rides can exceed an hour, could even be potentially up to an hour and a half. That also means potential for late buses based on the staff absences and planning for that day. It increases overtime for those that have to make up or cover where we don't have folks. We always worry about the potential for burning out staff that are working extra to get the job done each and every day. And I want to make sure we appreciate those folks that do work extra to make sure this job gets done every day. I know it's a lot, and we very much appreciate their efforts to do that. You know, when we're running very tight run times, any extra situation could increase delays, like weather is a good example. When you're already running tight, a bad weather day can certainly make that worse. So, the state of Nebraska requires any school bus driver to have a commercial driver's license to drive a school bus. So our current staffing levels, if we were hoping to someday return to that goal of 150 routes, we're approximately 31 drivers short of that goal as we stand today. That's obviously a moving target from day to day, but that's where it stands today. We're currently 11 drivers short for our consolidated route staffing plan on a day-to-day basis. So our first student contract allows for up to 20 drivers. Now, they are facing some similar struggles to what we are in terms of being able to supply the workforce. So we began last year with 8 drivers committed from them. We finished the year with 12. This year, despite there's some turmoil with what's going on in Omaha with busing up their contracts and so forth, so we have not been able to secure a commitment from them on the number of drivers they'll be able to provide for this coming school year. We're still working with them to try to see what they'll be able to provide. And of course, the contract utilization will be determined throughout the summer based on our staffing levels. We'll only want to use the contractors that we have to make up for the difference. And obviously, utilizing a contractor like First Student costs significantly more than using our folks in-house, LPS employees. Talking about the vehicles we have in our fleet, we currently have 2 small vehicles, minivans. We've got a number of Type A, the smaller mini buses, like you see up there. We've got quite a few of the Type C buses, and those we've kind of evolved over time into purchasing buses that are very versatile. I call them like a Swiss Army knife type bus. They are large enough to haul a number of students, but yet they all come with wheelchair lifts, the way we configure and purchase them now. They come full of seats, which have the built-in 5-point harness seating capability within them for like early childhood students. So they're very versatile in the types of routes that they can serve and the students that they can transport throughout the day. Then you see the large Type D bus, which is like for regular education routes, corner stops, larger numbers, also for activities and athletics. Those are used primarily for those purposes. Our fleet age has gotten better due to the hard work of this board in funding our depreciation account. So our current fleet age averages about 12 years, which is an improvement over years past. And we've recently been awarded the rebate program for the purchase of 3 new electric buses. And I will say that in doing the research regarding those buses, we've made the decision that we'll be pursuing those Type A or those mini type buses for that purpose. There are a number of reasons for that I can get into if you have questions about that, but that's what our current direction is for our EVs that we expect to get here sometime soon. This just goes over our Transportation Board Policy 3710 about who qualifies for education. Obviously, there's some criteria to qualify for a regular education ride, and that's 4 miles outside of the school, but yet within that school's attendance boundary. So there's not a lot of that, but we still do some of that. Special education students require an IEP, which specifies that transportation be in that plan. And then any other situations that the board deems beneficial for us to provide transportation for in special circumstances. So the 2024-25 transportation plan, we anticipate increases, and we have budget requests for 2 new EC sites with 2 classrooms each. As I understand it, those may not come online until second semester of this coming school year, but we're anticipating that. There is always the increase in things like parts to cover repairs and service on buses. That's always a moving target. We never know what parts we're going to need, what they're going to cost, but we look at past years to try to project what that might be. And so that's where that comes from. We're also adding a couple of runs between Standing Bear and TCA, as well as some additional runs for special education at Huntington and Southwest. Those will be absorbed within our already operational budget as it stands. So there's a couple of attachments that are included that you can look at. One's the budget breakdown, and another is the list of the runs that we're proposing for the coming school year. So those should be included as well. So at this point, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you.
Kathy?
So I'm going back to policy 3710,
Sure.
Because when we talk about it, when it says 4 miles, who set 4 miles?
That's state law.
I just wanted the community to understand, we didn't set that.
Nope.
That big number, the state set that.
Yep, that's a state law.
And we have to provide special education students if they're identified in their IEP, correct?
That's correct.
And the last one is, when we move kids out of their attendance areas, it is just the board decided we're gonna bus this school and not that school, but it's actually a school is overcrowded.
Correct.
We've moved students to another school that may have room, and they're provided transportation for that.
Absolutely correct. One example would have been Dawes. We had a section of students that were on around 37th and Cornhusker that we transported over to Dawes. There's another one over in the Bicentennial Estates area that we would provided transportation for in the past to a facility that was less crowded. Another example is the students from the Air Park area that we transport into SCO because of the barrier of Highway 34. We made the decision that we were going to transport them many
And
years
I-
ago as well. So
And I think that's like 9 miles anyway, so from
It's a
where we've
ways anyway,
assigned
so.
them, because there is no middle school in Air Park,
Correct.
correct? So as we go through this, when we talk about transportation, we really provide the bare needs or the bare bones of a transportation to this district. Parents have taken that responsibility largely on their own. So when we look at if we had to add transportation dollars to fund 60 to 80% of our students, would we be able to find drivers?
absolutely not.
That's
So
right.
I can tell you anecdotally, you know, the gentleman mentioned the way Omaha does that. They only provide through OPS transportation for special needs students. They contract with outside contractors for all of their regular education transportation that they provide. So they're spending a lot of money on a contractor, and I know they've recently lost their current contractor, which was STA, Student Transportation of America. They're going with a new contractor that hasn't been in this market previously called Zoom. That's coming into the market to provide that moving forward. All of these entities are competing for the same pool of potential applicants for driver positions, and we're one of them that's competing.
What I recall from like 20 years ago, Don might remember this because it was our first term, and we had a colleague that wanted us to farm out all of our transportation, and I said, we can't afford to farm it out. And he goes, well, we're going to do an RFP. I said, I'm all for that. And it came back even higher at that time than the
Yeah.
45% premium that you're paying now when we contract out some routes. So I just want to say thank you for keeping this under control. I wish we could get you more drivers. So my last question is, do you have any more hiring fairs or any opportunities for people who want to be bus drivers?
Great question. So I will tell you some good news. So the news hit about the increase in the driver wage here within the last couple of weeks. Consequently, we had a hiring fair right after that came out. And I would say that was one of the most productive hiring fairs we've seen in the last several. Out of that hiring fair, we came up with 10 potential candidates for driving positions for our department. So I think that increase in the pay was very effective in kind of getting the word out to people who might want a job that fits, you know, their lifestyle or their needs. So I
Thank
can
you,
report
Mr.
that positive news.
Thank you, Mr. Scarupla.
You bet. And we do have another one coming up in July, by the way. So we're hoping that one's
July when, do
equally.
we know?
I don't remember the date, July
July,
12th?
I have it at my fingertips. July 16th
16th,
at
yeah.
North Star High School, and that's from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the information is available on our district website, and I just typed in the word fair, and it took me to the
Here
information.
we go. Thank you.
So we'll hopefully have a similar outcome.
Yeah,
So-
perfect.
Annie?
So you said 150 routes. First of all, every time this comes up, and I truly try to look at the attachments,
Mhm.
and it's like, it's a
Kind of
length-
mind-boggling.
It's very mind-boggling. So my kudos to who has to figure all that out and the logistics of it. The question is, 150 would be your desired route.
Correct,
We're at 127.
correct.
What is the process of figuring out, so that's, 23 missing there, I mean, that we're not doing. What is the process of like, how do you figure out how to condense that? I mean, are we losing just routes and we just have to?
Yeah, sometimes we have to say no. You know, we aren't able to accommodate every request that might come in. There are a lot of hardships that we'd like to try to accommodate. I'm sure at some point, maybe the board would like to go shorter than 4 miles away from a school of attendance, like it was many years ago in the district. It's just a case of, we don't want kids to be on a bus for more than an hour, but currently a lot of them are because of that. So it's adding routes to make each of those current routes smaller than what they are now. A lot of times, we structure routes so that they run back to back in terms of school bell times. So we'll have a route packed full of kids getting into an 8 o'clock school, then that bus has to turn right back around and go pack itself full of kids to get to a 9 o'clock school. And unfortunately, they don't always make it by 9 o'clock. So if we were able to expand and add more routes, it would take the pressure off the existing ones in order to meet our goals of getting the kids to where we want to in a more timely fashion.
Well, thank you for, that realizing the hardships that we have to kind of figure out how to do it. The other question is, and maybe this is, I don't mean this to be an idle question, but if we consider it the first classroom and the last classroom, of what are we doing to could we actively, I work for an institution that we've talked about when they're going back on the buses or driving to and from to come visit, giving activities to be done on the buses. Do we have a process for that, or is it something we could think about? Yes?
Thinking back, and Phil can add to us, the first and the last classroom of the day, the intent of that is really more in the relationship base, having the driver know every student's name, greet every student at the door. We haven't tried to capture that as instructional time. I think that'd be a very heavy lift because the driver's busy driving and there's often not a para on the bus.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not saying instructional time. I'm like saying more of using it as, again, I think it'd be a student learning conversation, but as a time of no, I'm not thinking instructional. I'm thinking more in that relationship of using it as some positive, I don't know, maybe I have camp on my brain. I'm thinking as a parent, if my kid is on the bus for an hour and a half, is there any way that on that bus, there's some positive use of that time, whether it's like sit on this side to do homework, sit on this side to look at your phone, something like that, so that there could be some focused, whatever. I think it's a bigger conversation that I might suggest go to student learning, and I'm not saying next year, believe me. It's just more of an idea, and maybe if something could be thought about.
One thing I'll add is our staff does a good job of engaging with the students. They do offer them opportunities to do homework if they have that to do on the bus. Sometimes, depending on the age of the students, we may have a para who engages them in some learning activities that are provided by their counterparts at the school and so forth. So I know they work very closely with school staffs to help manage expectations, behaviors, things to keep them occupied and stimulated during the ride, to make it more successful. Especially it's hard to sit in one place for an hour or more, so we need to have something to keep them occupied and focused. And so our staff does a very good job of working with the schools to help provide some of that.
I guess I'm trying to say, if there's anything else we can do to help with that, I'm willing to give some thought.
Great, yeah, perfect.
All right. This item will come back to us at our next meeting. Thank you. Next, we have item